Howdy folks, Kevin here. Today I wanted to talk about a comment that was left on this video. I'm released over a year ago, and it's about why I use WebdriverIO. It's for the course that I'm currently working on, and I thought the comment was really well. It had a lot of great thoughts, which is why I want to go through it. So let's get to the comment. Okay, so here it is. I'm working in an Angular application with WebdriverIO using Cucumber and also with Jasmine. I found no big advantage over Selenium WebDriver. Please correct me if I'm wrong on any of the points below. So the first point they make, you still have to use explicit waits, so the auto wait is pretty much the same as waits you can do with Selenium. For the framework to work, I had to implement explicit waits for every method. When I recorded this video, this was with the sync mode still available. And so I talked a lot about how sync mode means that you don't have to use awaits, the await async keywords. And that was really great functionality. Unfortunately, completely outside of WebdriverIO's control, that functionality was deprecated. And with Node version 16, it went away. So now, when I talk about in this video that it does waiting for you, at least from an async and await standpoint, that's no longer available. So kind of unfortunate. It just shows that this video is a little bit out of date, and it shows the difficulty of making tech videos because the technology is always changing, and you have a video out there for a year, maybe, and it already is out of date. I do want to say WebdriverIO does have a fair amount of auto waiting built in. It depends on what waiting you're talking about. If it's the part of using the await keyword, that's different than waiting for elements to appear or disappear on the page. So WebdriverIO, you see, it does have to use the await keyword. However, if you try doing something like a click, it will actually wait for this div to appear and then try clicking it. So it will run this click command multiple times, or actually it will run the isExisting command multiple times, waiting for that element or those elements to appear. The limitation it's talking about here is using the double $sign and then going off of that. But if you used a single $sign div, it would actually wait. So it does have auto waiting built in like that. You can also create your own wait until statements to wait for specific things, which is actually really helpful. The other thing I wanted to mention is in the assertion library, this also has auto waiting built in. So if this button doesn't exist when this assertion is run, it will actually wait about 5 seconds, I think, and keep trying to check and see if that element ever appears. And if it never appears or is never displayed, in this case, it will fail. If it does appear after a millisecond like 50 milliseconds or so, it will actually pass. So that's another way that WebdriverIO has auto waits built in. I'm not sure about Selenium. If it has auto waits, I don't know. I haven't checked it out. So correct me if I'm wrong there. Second, the shorter commands take in account that you have to add the await keyword in WebdriverIO for every command, and even some horrible approaches I saw using chainable promises. Yeah, chainable promises are something that I'm not crazy about, and then that I think WebdriverIO does a pretty good job of avoiding, in my opinion. Of course, that issue is lowered for WebdriverIO and Selenium if you create wrapper methods. In a real framework, you won't be writing driver find element by XPath, and then here's your XPath for every single element interaction. And this is true. For the sake of the video, let's see where it is. Here's the example I gave where Selenium you use driver find element by ID, submit, click, and in WebdriverIO you use $submit.click. I did, to be fair, find a very verbose example and kind of stick with it. Although I don't think this is too verbose. Again, I haven't used a ton of bare Selenium, so maybe I'm getting this wrong. Maybe there are ways to make these page objects and everything and work around this fact. This is kind of a minor point that I'm making in this, so I can see that it does have some weaknesses. And again, I didn't have the await in this WebdriverIO example because back then you didn't have to use await. Unfortunately, you do now, and it makes it a little bit more complex. But I can see that being a good rebuttal to what I'm saying. the whole shorter commands bit, it's nice. It shouldn't be what you make your decision on because it's not the most important thing in the world. I just found it nice, and I needed something to push along this idea that WebdriverIO in general strives for simpler ways of doing things. The third point, grouping tests in Jasmine is painful and not very flexible. Cucumber has more flexible tags to group tests, but you have to add that extra layer of feature files, specifically Gherkin. Yeah, I don't remember talking about Jasmine in this video, so although I also didn't talk about Cucumber, for WebdriverIO, one thing that I actually like about it is that it lets you choose. So if we go to the frameworks, you can go between Mocha, Jasmine, or Cucumber. So if you don't like Jasmine, you can use Cucumber if you prefer that, but then you have to add that extra layer. I prefer Mocha. It seems easier. There are ways in Mocha to tag tests. You add a tag to your test title, and then you can run just those tests. It's not something that's documented super well, I wouldn't say, but it's not super complicated in my opinion to get it set up. So take that for what it is. Number 4, I found it harder to find errors in VS Studio with WebdriverIO. Selenium with Eclipse or IntelliJS is easier to track the error or failure traces. This is a fair point. Error finding is something that I think WebdriverIO can do a lot better at. I think it's got some really nice stuff with the debug command. I think it does have pretty good stack traces. It can get a little complex if you're using page objects. The VS Code Studio specific part might be changing soon. So back in the end of October, there was a tweet out by the WebdriverIO account on Twitter to say that some work on the VS Code WebdriverIO integration is coming soon. In this case, it's specifically talking about changing configurations, but it would be great to, I think, see some, yeah, you see the test runners there. That's cool. I haven't checked this out, honestly. It's one of those things that I saw and kept in the back of my mind. I don't use VS Code that much. I might start using it more. I don't know. I like Sublime Text. It's very simple. But you can see it's got the errors there, and let's see, where you're going to click it. Are you going to click an error? Oh, it's got the actual commands, so that's really nice. So I'll add a link to this tweet in the video for you to check out. And finally, number 5, WebdriverIO has less documentation compared to Selenium, which made me suffer. Aw. That's interesting. I haven't worked with Selenium. Again, I mentioned that I haven't worked with Selenium a lot, but I'm working on adding documentation through my course. Yeah, I'm trying to make a course that walks you through WebdriverIO. And so there's that. But I think the documentation is pretty good for WebdriverIO. Documentation is always going to be missing things. This is a good example. The switch to frame documentation, which is under JSON wire, which is the old one. It's a very basic example. Where does the ID come from? You know, it's one of those things. I can search for frame. So there's JSON wire. Okay, WebDriver protocol is actually what we want. It's basically the same documentation. It's got that ID there. And it could really stand to have a better example built in. But I'm going to say, like, this documentation comes from the community. And so if you want to add a better example, you're more than welcome to add a better example. Just go to the, where is it? At the bottom? Yeah, you can edit the page. On any bit of documentation, you can edit the page. Well, I'm not signed in, so it's not going to go there. And then add documentation. And it's always welcome, always appreciated. WebdriverIO did open an open collective to collect donations to help support the community in their work around WebdriverIO. So you can be reimbursed up to $1,000 if you follow certain things, submitting qualifying pull requests. And I think documentation could be added to this list if you really want to, if this is something that you're really interested in. you can get reimbursed for some of the time that you spend on documentation. As it mentions here, we don't really expect this to pay you your market value for the time that you spend on it, and it's not going to allow you to work on it full time. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources to provide that level of payment, but hopefully it does reimburse you for some of the time you've spent and give you a little extra incentive to help contribute back when you have to weigh what to work on, kind of. So yeah, as far as that documentation, I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just trying to say that I feel it's pretty good. There's work being done on it. There's a lot of good courses out there as well. But if you have specific documentation that you think is missing, mention it, and we can get some work on it. I can put out a video on it. I will say I get a lot of comments, and I've got a list of hundreds of videos to cover as far as how certain things work, how to do specific things. And I really wish I could spend my time making these videos more often and really getting to answer all of the comments. Unfortunately, it's just not, I just don't have the time for that. And yeah, that's just unfortunate. But reach out to the Gitter community. They're pretty helpful. Post on Stack Overflow. And then you can always send feature requests to WebdriverIO saying, hey, could you get a little bit more documentation on how to use, say, switch to parent frame or switch to frame or something. Like, I'm trying to do this specific thing. I think this is something that the community would also want to do. Specific documentation, you can also post to our blog. We do accept blog posts. And so if you find yourself, you really struggled to figure something out. So there was one post about upload files that was, when we updated to version 6, the upload file functionality kind of switched, and it was confusing for people who were used to the old way of doing it, how to switch to the new way. And so we were able to get a blog post out there that helped explain how to do that in the new way, and that was really helpful. So people can now go to that blog post. So what I want to say with that is, if you struggle with something and figure it out, tell other people, because chances are they've struggled with something. And there's just, like, you've learned this valuable knowledge. Might as well share it. Might as well get something from it. That's kind of how I started this YouTube channel. I learned something. I think it was Knock.js that I used, and I made a video about it. And it's one of my more popular videos out there. So anyway, I thought that was a great comment. Had some really great insights, and I really appreciate this type of feedback. It's always great to have people question the stuff I put out there, because it keeps me honest and it helps deepen the discussion past what I just offer on the surface. It helps throw a little bit of constructive criticism, I think. And I think that's really valuable. So anyway, until next time, have fun testing.